someone give me the seat?
Maybe. So you may have to slide it over. Okay, so we've got a panel today of students, your peers in the honors program. They're going to be talking about summer research experiences that they've had. They've had a diversity of experiences in a variety of disciplines. And so we're just going to talk to them and find out what exactly they were doing with their summer, how they found these opportunities, how they went about applying, what they think the biggest benefit was, where they hope it's going to take them. My ultimate goal in this is to raise awareness in you of the different kinds of opportunities that are available to you. There's all kinds of great programs that you can take part in. Some of them come with money, not just for travel to the sites of these opportunities, but also a stipend that you are paid while you're working on a project. And sometimes that can be sizable, like $4,000 for 10 weeks over the summer. Plus all your room and board and travel is sometimes paid as well. I'm going to be the moderator for this conversation. So let me introduce our panelists. We have Adrina Garrett. Adrina is a double major in math and in computer science. Then we have Gabe Lopez. Gabe is a math major. We have Crystal Solano. Crystal is a psychology major, and then we have Sierra Hammond. And Sierra is just a foretaste of starting off next quarter. Crystal is going to be kicking us off next quarter when we talk about opportunities to study away from here, study abroad opportunities. Because she spent a whole semester in Newfoundland, Canada, and had a really interesting time there. Okay, so I thought we'd begin with a question for you just about what you did. So if you can each just take a couple minutes and describe for us what you were doing in your research experience.
Hello, so my research experience was at San Diego State University. I'm really thankful for the experience because it really incorporated both of my majors. My experience was with machine learning regression. And we basically worked with data, and we were trying to figure out what's the best way to optimize data. We didn't necessarily finish the project. We're still working on it, but it was a fun project.
Good.
Hello. I have two experiences that I'm mostly going to be basing my testimony here on today. I did 2 REUs over the summer, research experience for undergraduates. The first one I did was after my sophomore year. I spent 8 weeks up at the University of Washington, Bothell, where I researched tiling theory. And this past summer, I spent 8 weeks here doing more research in differential geometry. Both of them were pretty similar in terms of structure. The actual subject matter that we researched was very, very different. But both of them basically worked like a 9 to 5. We came in, did our time, and went home. Most of the time was spent doing research. We learned a little bit at the beginning about the field that we would be doing research in, and then towards the end of the second week or so, we started picking projects that we wanted to work on. The next remainder of the time was spent both working on the problem, and once we had something meaningful that came out of it, we started working on different methods of publishing our research. Both of them are both projects are currently working on publishing a paper, and then poster presentations came out of both of them as well.
Hi everyone, I was in Boston, Massachusetts. I was working with a pretty popular psychologist, his name's Keith Maddox, and we were looking at how discrimination affects light skins versus dark skins. And I was doing a lot of my time doing a literature review, which is going into the database and looking at articles that have to do with our research question.
So my experience was a little bit different, where I didn't go somewhere over the summer per se. I won a fellowship, and so I submitted a proposal and had my own research question. So I spent a lot of my time over the summer here working with my faculty advisor, doing a lit review, going through data. And then towards the end of the summer, spent some time in Boston. I went to Harvard and got some feedback on my research. I went to a conference and got feedback from the best scholars in the field for that particular subject to better inform my research. And I'm still working on my project, but it was a really great way to spend the summer.
What about the USC things?
Oh, and I also spent a week at USC learning about PhD programs and getting feedback from the faculty there to better understand how to apply to a PhD program, what life is like in a PhD program. So if that's something that any of you want to do, definitely come talk to me.
Let's keep the mic with you, Sierra, and we'll come back this way. Can you talk about how you found out about the experiences that you took advantage of? I mean, were there resources out there that you were using? Was it word of mouth through faculty or peers? How did you learn about the opportunities that you found?
So I'm a second year, and the presentation that you guys are going to see next quarter, we actually saw a bit of it last year when I was a first year. And so Crystal gave the presentation, and I was so inspired after hearing everything that she did that I went to Dr. Marshall. And so if you're a first year and you don't really talk to Marshall and you think it's intimidating, I totally can see where you're coming from because I was really nervous. But I went in and I was like, hey, you don't really know me, but I want to do research, so I want to do the MARC program. And he was like, okay, well, you're political science, so you don't really qualify for the MARC program, but let's find you a fellowship. So we found a fellowship through the National Collegiate Honors Council, and it's called the Ports Interdisciplinary Fellowship Award. And so it can be two students who come from different disciplines who want to work together on a research project, or one student who has an interdisciplinary approach to a research question. So that was what I did, and reached out to Dr. Conroy in the political science department. You have to find a faculty advisor for your proposal. And so the proposal was probably the hardest part of the the whole process, because it was 20 pages. And you have to do a really intensive lit review and talk about why your research is important and the implications that you think it will have in your field. But it's a really, really, really great experience, and I would strongly urge you to do it if you can. And you get a $1,000 grant, so that's pretty good too.
So as Sierra mentioned, I'm in a program called MARC, which I'll talk about next quarter.
Talk about it now.
Now? Okay. So I heard about the MARC program about 2 years ago in April. I just got back from my study abroad trip in Canada, and at that university in Canada, everybody did research. Everybody. It was expected in their junior and senior year, and I was the only student there there were a couple other international students, but me and the group of international students were the only ones not doing research. So it kind of felt like I was being left out, and I got really interested in everybody else's research. They were having senior presentations all over campus, and I would attend all of them every single day. And I got inspired, and so I spoke to the social psychologist at that university, and he happened to know the social psychologist in this university, which is weird because it's 3,000 miles away from each other, and he happened to know him. And when I got back to Cal State, I had an interview with him, and immediately he took me on. We just hit it off really well. His research interests really matched mine perfectly, and then he told me about the MARC program. And the MARC program is a program for students who are really interested in getting a PhD in the future. The fields that they look at are biology, chemistry, physics, I believe, and any STEM field, and psychology. And so if you're interested in getting a PhD and you're interested in doing research now, they'll take you on your junior and senior year. They'll pay you a stipend of $1,000 every single month, and they pay for you to travel to conferences. Last year I went to Atlanta, Georgia to present 2 posters, and this year they're sending me to Portland for another 2 posters. And it's a really great program. They also pay for your GRE prep, and having MARC on your CV is kind of it assures you that you're getting into the PhD program that you want. Yeah. What was the question, the original?
How did you find out about the research opportunity that you took advantage of over the summer?
Okay, thank you. And so the way that I found out about Boston, the research conference that I went to is called SPSP, and they have a summer research experience called SPUR. I can't remember the acronyms or else I would have told you. But yeah, so my mentor told me about that one, the one that I've been working with for 2 years now. Yeah, he told me that SPSP had a summer research opportunity, and so that's how I found out about that.
Okay, so I found out about REUs actually while I was in high school. I confided to my calculus teacher at the time that, hey, I got accepted to Cal State as a math major. And she instantly just went into teacher mode and started giving me advice. One of the things she mentioned was an REU, specifically the one here at this campus. So by the time applications rolled around, which is actually about now, this time of year, I applied for it. What I didn't know at the time was that there are a million of these programs out there. So I applied to the one after my freshman year and didn't get in because I only applied to one. And I was determined the next year to get into one. So after that first time, I started looking around to see if there was any other similar opportunities. I found out at that point that there was over 100 of these programs in my own field, math. If you guys are in your own fields, there's probably just as many. So I applied. My main resource for finding these programs was the NSF website. The National Science Foundation funds most of these projects, and those are the ones that are called REUs. There are other programs that are not labeled as REUs, but they're also summer research programs and very similar. They're just not funded by the NSF. But the NSF has a very long list. If you Google NSF REUs, like the first link that you'll find is the NSF site for all the REU sites that exist. You can sort it by your field, and then it'll take you to each one of their websites. For my math majors who are in the room, there's another site that a math professor has so kindly developed for people in your situation. It's called mathreuprograms.org, and that is similar to the NSF site, but with the extra advantage that he has compiled a list of non-REU programs as well that are on that list. And it's similar, it's just a big list of programs. It kind of has a summary of each one and a link to their website and application site. And that site was very helpful. The next year, when I was looking to do my second REU, I pretty much followed the same process.
So I found out about REUs through faculty here. I would always go to advising as a math major, it's required. But I would definitely recommend that you do talk to faculty because they'll always guide you in the right direction. So I went to my faculty advisor and they talked about REUs, and I didn't think I really needed it. I was like, I'm just going to school to become a high school teacher. I don't really need to do a whole lot of research. I don't really want to travel. In my mind, there's so many reasons not to go. But then I was sitting in the same seats that you guys are in, well, in a different classroom, but but I was sitting in your position, and I heard all my colleagues talking about how they went on their REUs and how exciting they were, and all the interesting people they would meet and all these cool new ideas and just topics. And so I was fascinated, and so I thought I would apply, not thinking much of it. I only applied to one, which I do not recommend. You definitely should apply to more than one. But I later got a phone call saying that I had made it, and I was just thrilled. So again, mine was with the NSF. What you do is just go to the NSF website, and they will have a tab where you can click on the different majors that they have. So they'll have stuff like econ and engineering, physics, that just science stuff for the National Science Foundation. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll point out too, who was at the fall retreat? Show of hands. Okay. About half the group. Do you remember that session about SOC, Student Opportunity Center?
Yes.
Right, if you were at the retreat, you may remember the Student Opportunity Center session. That's a software platform that Cam and I have invested in for you guys. And it's a searchable database that has all of the NSF stuff. It's got programs like the ones that Crystal and Sierra participated in. So it's not just REUs for STEM people. It's for just about any major, and you can search it based on your major, your interest, what location you want to be in. It's extensive. So if you want to know more about that, you can check in with me or Cam, and we can let you know. I'm curious though, each of you seem to talk about the role that faculty have played. I'm wondering if you could say more about the importance you find in relying on faculty and how you can get over the sort of anxiety about going and talking to faculty about these sorts of things.
So, yeah, faculty was definitely a lot of help. I'm really grateful to go to this university in that I feel that everything is so personal, that you can talk to these professors and that they genuinely do care about your experience. So for me, faculty helped me a lot just because I remember going to my math advisor and talking about what am I doing with my life. I'm a math major, but I'm not entirely sure I want to go into teaching. Do I continue on my education? Do I just get a teaching credential and leave? And so definitely she convinced me just to explore, because that's like the hardest first step, is just even starting to consider, trying new things. And so she told me to look into going into PhD programs, into going into master programs. She told me about research experiences. So it helped in that she pushed me a lot. But on top of that, they will also tell you their experience, because they were also at one point in our shoes, And so she told me about how she was originally a high school teacher too. This is Dr. Yusen, if any of you guys know her. But she told me she was a high school teacher and she loved the job, but she also considered, maybe I want to teach at university level. So then she went on and continued her education and she was able to become a professor. And now I believe she's going to be going to school again for her second PhD. So it goes to show that it's never too late, that you could always try something new. And it's good to at least, just try.
I had an advisor, still have this advisor. This professor is still someone I'm in regular contact with. She was the one who directed me to the Math REU program's website. The guy who runs that website is actually an old colleague of hers, so she knew to direct me there. She eventually became one of my recommendation writers. These programs require like 2 or 3 letters of rec apiece. So that's another thing. Be close with your faculty, because you're going to need them to write letters for you eventually, and the nicer you are to them, the nicer they will write about you. That is to your advantage by far. Dr. Marshall was one of my writers for that first time around, and I got into a program, so thank you. Faculty will be your best friend for mostly anything that you want to do in college. So finding someone who will stand in your corner is a huge advantage. Relating that specifically to a research opportunity, like I said, my advisor directed me to that website, and again, just gave me tips for my application. She helped me pick out programs that I might want to go to, and she was just an all-around help. Dr. Johnson, if any of you are familiar with her, she's fantastic. Another thing is that once you start talking to them about research, they will also connect you to more opportunities later, since they know that you are now the type that is going to go after that kinds of opportunities. Dr. Johnson was one of my original letter writers, and now she's going to be my research advisor, or she has been my research advisor for the past year, and we're now finishing off our project with an independent study this coming winter quarter.
So for me, faculty have impacted my future since the moment I stepped onto campus. 3 of my professors from my first quarter freshman year had I'm telling you, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I am today. The first one being Dr. Marshall. My first quarter, I was failing math. And I went into his office in tears telling him to kick me out of the honors program because I wasn't going to meet the requirement, the 3.0, I think required 3.5?
3.3.
The 3.3 requirement to stay in the program. So I was like, kick me out because I'm gonna drop out of college because I can't do this. And I was just like, I was super emotional. And so he contacted people in the math department to help me. My honors colleagues all he would stay later than he had to help me with math. And everybody just got together to help me. And then Dr. Marshall convinced me to, bring up the courage to talk to my math professor. And so my math professor would stay she would come early to her office hours to help me. So her office hours were from 7 to 8. So I would be on campus at 7 in the morning until 8 for office hours, and then she would have me go to the tutoring center from 8 to 10:55, and then I had her class from 11 to 12. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 7 a.m. to 12, I would be working on math, and I passed. I didn't fail. And then another professor that I had my freshman year, her name is Alexandra Caballero. She's in the English department. She was my English professor. I would just talk to her every day after class because I would just love her prompts. I would absolutely love her class, love her prompts. On my last day, she asked me if I would be her research assistant. So that was my first experience with research. My freshman year, finishing up my first quarter, she asked me to be her research assistant, and we worked for the rest of the year together. And Dr. Marshall and Dr. Caballero both wrote my recommendation letters for the programs that I'm currently in.
So I know that approaching faculty can be incredibly daunting, and it's awkward and uncomfortable. I'm extremely awkward, so I feel your pain there, but it is the best thing you will ever do. Because I remember when I stumbled into Dr. Marshall's office, and I was this confused first year, and he was like, why don't you apply for this fellowship? And it was something that I had never thought was feasible or something that I could do in my first year. And I thought, okay, well, why not? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? You're back right where you are. And so one of the components of submitting a proposal is you need a faculty advisor. And so I was currently taking, or at the time I was taking, Intro to American Government with Dr. Meredith Conroy in the Political Science Department. And I walked into her office one day, and for those of you who haven't been to the poli-sci offices, they're hidden. So I was like, oh my God, I can't even find her office. She's never gonna wanna be my advisor if I can't find her office. I was so nervous, and I eventually found it and walked in and was like, hey, you have no idea who I am because I'm in your 250-person Intro to American Government lecture, but I wanna start a research project. And she said, okay, sit down, what do you wanna do? Let's work on it. And from there, everything just fell into place. And so even though it's scary, it is something that will benefit you in every facet of your academic career. Because even now she'll send me things when I was at USC, she emailed me and was like, hey, you should apply for this program. And I ended up getting it, and I didn't think I would. Or hey, apply for this travel grant through ASI so you can go to APSA. And I didn't think I would get it, and I got it. And I recently came back from the University of Michigan, and they flew me out to present my research because of a program that she shared with me. So faculty will open so many doors with you. They'll write you amazing letters of recommendation, but you have to make the first step. And while it's scary, it's definitely worth it.
Excellent. I'm curious, you talked a little bit about the application for the Ports Fellowship, not about the USC program. So I'm wondering if you can each talk about what the applications were like. How tough was it to apply for these programs?
So for the Ports Fellowship, it was really difficult just because everything was new. So you had to write an abstract, you had to do a preliminary lit review, and those were all things that were new to me, which was really intimidating. But I also participated in USC's School of Politics and International Relations predoctoral summer institute. And how I found out about that one was actually on Twitter. Someone, a faculty member, there's academics and professors, there's this whole different culture of Twitter, which is insane. But so she sent me this tweet and was like, hey, you should apply for this. And I was like, are you sure this is legit? It was a link on Twitter that you clicked and took you to a Google Doc to fill out. And it ended up taking me, I think, 20 minutes to fill out in total. 20 minutes. And I spent a week and a half at USC, didn't pay for anything. They put us up in dorms, we met faculty, we didn't pay for food, got to meet all these incredible people after spending 20 minutes filling out a form that my advisor sent me on Twitter. So there are opportunities everywhere, I promise you. You just don't know about them, but that's where your faculty can come in and help you out.
Sorry, excuse me. Most of my applications were just as easy as hers. My mentor would just send me something and I would apply, and sometimes I would get them and sometimes I didn't. That's what happened with my summer research experience. He sent it to me, I applied, and I got in. He actually helped me with my CV though. Before getting into research, I was like, okay, here's my resume. They don't call it resumes when you start research, it's called a CV, which I had no idea. So he kind of revamped my resume and turned it into what it was supposed to look like, and man, he made it look nice, even though I really didn't have that much experience. For the MARC program though, they accept about 5 to 7 people a year here on campus, and so it's a very competitive program, and it's to be sure that the people who apply are very serious about getting a PhD. So that was probably the hardest application process I had to go through. During my interview, he sat me down and he looked intently into my eyes and he's like, "Are you sure? I don't know if I should accept you because I'm not really sure if you're gonna get into PhD program." And that's exactly what he said to me. That's exactly what he said. He's like, "I don't know if that's really what you want to do." And I could have just been like, "Okay, you're right," and walked out. But I don't know what it was something got into me, and I'm not gonna tell you who it was, but I stood up and I was like, "You don't know me. You're just the person conducting my interview. I'm gonna get my PhD with or without your help. I'm already doing research, so I don't even need your program." And then I said, "But it was really nice meeting you. Goodbye." And then about 5 minutes later, I was in the elevator about to cry because I have never spoken that way to a professor before. And I opened up my email and it said, "Congratulations, you have been accepted into the MARC program."
That's how that works.
All right, I regret choosing my seat because now I have to follow that. Math REU applications are mostly all the same, with a few very minor differences maybe between some of your programs. It's usually your letters of rec, which I've been told are some of the most important components of that. Some kind of personal statement, maybe a research statement or something. And I don't know, a few programs might have something extra, like, oh, how much, or what classes have you taken? Actually, most of them ask you what classes you've taken. They ask for prior research. They'll ask, which for a lot of applicants is absolutely nothing. They'll ask, I got one application that said, "What is your favorite mathematical fact?" Which is daunting, because if you pick something too
What's yours?
basic,
What's
oh
your
my
favorite
god.
math?
I'll give you the answer I gave, which didn't get me anywhere. Here's a question for you guys. Are there more, do you guys know what the natural numbers are? Yeah, just counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, etc. Are there more of those or even numbers? There's the same amount of them, which to me when I first learned that blew my mind, because I figured if all of the even numbers are natural numbers and the natural numbers have all the odds in there, then how can there be the same number? You can prove mathematically that there's the same amount.
What? How?
I know.
I can show you guys.
Mind-blowing.
It is completely mind-blowing. In math, that's like baby stuff. So, yeah, you would think oh, mind blown. But when you're talking about the world of research mathematics, that's like baby stuff. So that application actually didn't get accepted. Anyways. But yeah, they have different recommendations. Some of them are a little daunting. There's this program, or there's this website that a lot of the programs went through. It's called Math Programs, not Math REU programs, just Math Programs. And it's the site that collects a lot of applications for these kinds of programs. And it was really daunting because a lot of them were super professional. They ask you to upload your CV. They ask you to upload documents that you wouldn't even have. They ask you for your prior research document, and I didn't have any prior research, so I didn't even upload anything. And it was wow, this is really scary. I don't know if I can keep up with the people who are actually using this thing to the max. And So those programs were a little scary. The program that I actually got accepted to, the application was a Google Doc. So that's another thing. Like, it's just a Google form, really super informal looking compared to some of the rest of them. The one that I got accepted to here, they had their own form. It wasn't through math programs. And again, it felt super casual. So I guess that just says I'm not cut out for formal stuff. That was a joke. Thank you. Thank
Apparently
you.
you're not cut out for humor either.
Apparently. Your silence just affirms that. Thank you, Dr. Morrison.
Get him, Gabe. Love you, Gabe.
Thanks, I feel it. So that just goes to show you that there's this kind of range. You might get something super casual and super informal, or you might get something that looks like a job application. I know for one of the programs that I applied to, I've heard that it's harder to get into that institution's REU program than it is to get into their PhD program. It's like ridiculous how competitive these programs are. So I would say just make sure you give it some time. Most of the applications are due between maybe even as late or as early as December. Some were as late as March. So you've still got time. Winter break is a great time to work on your applications because it's like a few essays you have to write, maybe a research statement, a personal statement, maybe something else, and your CV, which probably doesn't exist yet. So make sure you have lots of time to not only look for the programs that you want to apply to, but to actually write up your applications. I was told when I was really serious about getting into one that if you really want to improve your chances of getting into one of these programs, you should apply to like 10 of them. I think that second time that I applied and actually got into the Washington program, I actually did apply to 10. Out of those 10, I got 2 invitations. So that was nice. But if I didn't apply to, say, those 2 programs, then I might not have even been invited anywhere. I will say that after I accepted the invitation, I withdrew my application elsewhere because the directors of these programs put a lot of time and effort into picking who they're going to allow into their program. So I'm sure they appreciate it when you withdraw your name, because if they pick you and you say, oh, I'm already going somewhere else, then they might remember that later when you apply to like a PhD program or something. So I did that. I encourage you guys to do the same. It looks really bad when you get invited somewhere and accept, and then get invited somewhere else, and then you accept that one and withdraw your first acceptance. So try not to do that, because they might hold a grudge about that one too. If you get an invitation, and you're waiting on someone else to invite you first, maybe a higher choice or something, I would say wait till the deadline, maybe even email that better choice to see where your application stands. Because they might have already rejected you and they just haven't sent out the emails yet, or they might be like, oh, you're in the final stages, or oh, we're already did the first round of cuts and might invite you. Then you have to decide whether or not you're going to accept the first invitation. By the time I got my first invitation, the application was like a week later, or the deadline was like a week later, and I emailed a couple other programs that I might have preferred to see where my application was at. Most of them didn't respond. A couple of them said, yeah, you're still in the running, but no promises. If you got an invitation, take it. So I did. I don't want to risk it. One application is good enough, or one invitation is good enough. You already got your Somerset. You don't want to risk it for, Harvard or something if you didn't get in, or if there's a chance that you might not get in. Plus, I was pretty happy with the program that sent me an invitation in the first place, so I was happy to accept that invitation.
So for my application, again, I applied thinking nothing of it. I knew it was very competitive, so I was just like, I'm not going to get it, but I'm going to at least say that I tried. So I applied. It took me 20 minutes. All I had to do was, I needed 2 letters of recommendation, one of which I asked for one by Dr. Marshall. So So thank you, Dr. Marshall.
You're welcome.
With the letters of recommendation, I always like to ask the professors before I email them, like it asks for like a link, there's a link I was supposed to send to the professor, and then they were supposed to fill it out online or something like that. But I like to email or talk to my professors in person first, usually asking about the letter of recommendation, and then I always like to give just like an information form too, especially if you're not too familiar with faculty. I think it's always good to like have a sheet where you could say things that you've done. You could say community service, or you know, the classes you've taken, the grades you've taken and stuff. So just so how the professor knows like how you stand. It's also important to know like, yeah, I've taken your class, this is the grade that I received in your class. So I always like to print that out or email that to my professors so they can kind of have help with the letter of recommendation. On top of that, it also asked for the classes that I've taken and the grades that I received, so I listed those. And then there was a short essay that had to be included where we talked about why we deserve to be there, why do we want to be there, and you know, previous research and stuff like that. And I didn't really have any previous research, so I talked about how I participated once in someone else's research. I had a high school professor who, we were the guinea pigs. He just studied us with his website number vendor, and so I talked about watching him do that and how that was really cool and amazing to watch and participate in. I talked about, well, first I made sure to like read the website and see what they were looking for, because every website will kind of talk about the projects that they're going to be holding, kind of the values that they have. They want to make sure that you work well with others and that you're able to present yourself well. So it's important to really aim your essay at what they're looking for. And that was all the application took.
Okay, so my next question, kind of a brass tacks question in addition to a more ethereal question. So number one, was there any kind of money attached to the program that you participated in? And then what were some of the other benefits associated with the program for you?
Yes, there was money. Our RU got a stipend of $5,800. You received half of it up front and then the other half when you completed the program. So it was a lot of money, and I'm thankful for that. But some RUs allow you to live on campus and you don't have to pay for housing at all. My RU, however, did not allow us to live on campus, and San Diego housing is pretty expensive. So yeah, that took up a lot of it. And on top of that, a lot of the living near the university only allowed you to stay up to like a certain point before the RU was complete. So then after that, a lot of the girls and guys at the RU were kind of scrambling, like, where do we live for the next 2 weeks? So after that, some of that money also had to go into like Airbnbs nearby the campus also. So it's nice if you could find an RU where you could live on campus, nice and close, and you don't have to spend that money just to live somewhere. I would recommend that. Some other benefits, definitely the friends you make. You meet some really fascinating people from all over. Some people come all the way across the country, and it's really neat. You'll have a lot in common with these people. They have the same interest as you, and it's amazing to spend time with them.
All right, so my first program in Washington offered a pretty good deal. We got a stipend of $4,000 for 8 weeks. We got to live on campus, and at the end, if we chose to go to a conference, they provided some support for that as well, so that was really nice. That one did not offer anything for travel, which kind of sucked, but it was a flight to Seattle from California. That's not too bad. For the guy who came from Florida, that was a little bit more heavy. My program that I did here actually did offer support for travel, which for me was nothing. But they also put me up in housing. They gave me a stipend of $4,000. They gave me a food card here for lunch, just that I could take to the Commons or the SU or something, for like almost $300. And on top of that, they gave me a food stipend for like $970 or something. So overall, from that program here, I got over $5,000 worth of stuff out of it. So that was pretty nice. As far as other benefits, the experience is fantastic. because you get a sense of what research is, and if you're not sure if you want to go to grad school or not, then that's a fantastic experience, because grad school is a lot of research. And if you take this kind of experience and realize that you don't like research, then you know not to apply to graduate school. If it turns out you love research, then you know that grad school is probably the right choice for you. In addition to that, you do research at these programs, and you get that work out of it. So like I said, posters and various other presentations came out of these programs. My first REU, I presented at the Joint Mathematics Meetings, which is the largest math conference in the world. Last year that ended up being in San Diego, so not a huge trip for me. But then I also took that work to present in Washington, D.C. for another conference, and that was pretty cool. I wouldn't have been able to do that if it weren't for the work that I did at the REU. This past summer, I did some work that I'll be presenting at the Joint Math Meetings again, except this year it's in Baltimore. So I actually get a nice little vacation. I'm still going to a conference in January. So that is another door that these programs open for you. You know, presenting at conferences, on top of being really fun, is a fantastic thing to have on grad school applications, at least so I'm told. I'll let you guys know after my application results come back. And it's just so much fun. Also, like the friends again that I met, I want to touch on what Adrina said, they're awesome. Like I still talk to my REU cohort from this past summer. The summer before that, we've kind of drifted apart, but I still talk to like my two closer friends that I was, well, one was my roommate, one was just another friend of mine that I met, and I still talk to them pretty regularly too. So it's really cool to make those connections as well. Also, whenever you do research, your research advisor is another great person to ask for a letter of recommendation. Having a letter from a research advisor as opposed to just a professor that you took a class with, that can speak a little bit more to whoever you're sending these letters to.
So the SPUR program, SPSP SPUR program, offered me a stipend of $3,000. That was the only one I had applied to. So they had already sent me my acceptance before I was even thinking about applying to any others. So keep your options open for sure. Just like Gabe said, apply to a lot, and then if you get accepted to more than one, see which one offers you, more, or also, which one is a potential school you'd like to do your PhD in or master's program in. That's really important too, because if you make connections at that school, chances are they're going to speak on your behalf when you go there. And on top of that, Mark was still paying me my monthly stipend. So in the end, out of the whole research experience, I got about $6,000 plus flight and travel. Oh, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
And yes, you make really good friends. My friend that I made actually was also from here and is sitting right over there.
Hey.
Her name's Erica. She was actually about 15 minutes away from me. I was at a school called Tufts University, which is in a city called Medford. And Erica was at Harvard actually doing really cool robot research. So we would meet up like every night and eat food.
So my fellowship didn't come with nearly as much money as theirs did, so maybe I should have done an REU. But so I got a $1,000 grant through the National Collegiate Honors Council for my ports research, and so once you find out you get it, they send you $500, and then at the end, when your paper's complete, you have 18 months to complete your project. They give you the rest of the money, and then USC, it was free. They emailed and said, "Congratulations, you've been accepted," and they covered everything. So we're close to Southern California. We're in Southern California, and they reimbursed me for gas. And they flew people out from like Florida and Minnesota and all these places, so that was really awesome. But I would say the benefits of doing those two things has amounted to a lot more than the programs themselves. Because I have my fellowship and because I was at the pre-doc program, the University of Michigan actually invited me to present at their Emerging Scholars Conference. And so that was awesome because they fly you out and they pay for your flight and your advisor's flight, and you get a stipend, and you get to practice presenting, and it was really amazing. And you meet people who share your interests, which is so awesome, because I know like you guys have your friends here, maybe they're like different majors or they don't share your interests or they're not too into research, but you go and you find people who are super excited about the same things that you want to study. And so I met people who I'm co-authoring with, and we're actually presenting at a different conference in April. And so you'll meet friends in the discipline who you can work with both academically but also keep up with personally.
Nice, thank you. Okay, last question. Just what one piece of advice would you give everybody, having said all you said?
Apply for anything and everything. Like that was the one thing that, or the biggest takeaway I think that I'd have from everything, is because even if you don't get it, the worst thing that happens is you're right back where you are now. But think about what can happen if you do get it. Think about all the doors that can be open for you. And so even though approaching the professor can be scary or the application can be daunting, even if it doesn't work out, you aren't losing anything. But if it does work out, think of everything that you're gaining.
This is advice from a professor I got actually yesterday, and I thought it was great advice. If you're trying to get a letter of recommendation and you don't know that many faculty members yet, because you're going to need letters of recommendation for the programs you apply to, grab a professor at the beginning of the quarter and go to their office hours and say, please notice me, I'm going to be doing really well in your class, I'm going to be answering questions, focus on me so that you could write me a good letter of recommendation. Yeah, at the end. And then, keep going to their office hours, ask good questions. If you don't have any questions, make some up. Ask good questions. Do well on the exams.
I think the biggest piece of advice is do it. I cannot express how much both programs have just changed my life. I got so much out of them, and I can't imagine how much worse off I'd be if I hadn't done them. I got a huge benefits out of them on several fronts, several facets of my life, mathematically, academically, personally. I don't think I ever would have done some of the things that I've done if it wouldn't have been for these programs. So just do whatever you can to try to find a place in one of these things for you, if this is what you're interested in. If this is not something you're interested in, then don't listen to me. But for honor students, or for a lot of honor students, that is something you want. So just try to get into one of them. Don't shotgun your applications, but make sure you apply to several of these programs. Build strong relationships with your letter writers. Do well in your coursework, because that also is going to affect how you get in. But just do as much as you can to participate.
Can I say one thing about what you said? If you don't think that this is going to be for you, I would suggest doing it anyway just to see. Because I think you might change your mind, and if not, at least it looks good on any applications or anything you might want to do in your future. It'll always just look good. And you'll have a bond with another, another professor. So I think even if you might not think that this is for you, try it anyway. You're young. Try it.
I entirely agree. The hardest step is just the first step of doing it. I definitely believe that you should allow yourself to have the option to decide whether or not you want to do it. Just saying like, oh, I don't feel like applying. You're not even giving yourself the shot, you know what I mean? So definitely the hardest part is just applying. If they say no, you're exactly where you were when you started. I mean, it's important to at least allow yourself the opportunity and see if you can, and then roll with it from there.
All right. I want to thank you all for participating in this panel. I want to throw one more piece of information out there. If you are not in a STEM field, you heard Crystal talking about the MARC program. That hits some of the social sciences as well as some of the natural sciences and physical sciences. But if you're in the humanities, any English majors out there, if you are intent upon going to a PhD program, there is a new fellowship program on campus that is like MARC, but for humanities people. It's called the Mellon Mays the Mellon Mays Fellowship. And it's the same deal. They give you a stipend, they pay you to do summer experiences, they even give you money while you're in a PhD program. And being a Mellon Mays Fellow virtually guarantees you're going to get into the kind of PhD program you want to get into. So check that out, ask me for more information if you want it. That being said, help me thank our panelists one more time. And really, take a look at the Student Opportunity Center database. Look and see if there are opportunities that you want to take advantage of and apply for. And that being said, have good luck on exams and have a great break.
Marshall, again.